I thought this year would be different. I told myself that on the drive up to Silverwood, watching the snow settle into soft white layers on the highway guardrails. I told myself again when I carried Leo's overnight bag up my mother's porch steps. And I told myself a third time when we stepped into her living room at 9:52 that morning, just in time to watch my 7-year-old son realize he didn't exist in this family at all. The moment it happened wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was quiet, almost delicate, like a snowflake landing on your hand and melting before you notice. The room glowed with Christmas lights and glossy wrapping paper. My sister Carla's kids, Kayla, Mason, and little Ruby, sat knee-deep in gifts, shrieking with delight as they tore into one box after another. iPads, drones, robotics kits, a new mountain bike with neon spokes. Their laughter bounced off the walls the way Christmas laughter is supposed to. But Leo sat beside me on the carpet, legs folded tightly under him, hands tucked into the sleeves of his sweater, as if trying to take up as little space as possible. Every time a gift was passed out, he leaned forward just a little, hope flickering across his face like a candle almost out of wax. And every time, the name on the tag was not his. 36 gifts, bright and loud and overflowing with joy. Not one of them for my son. And that was the moment, in that glowing, glittering room, that something inside me cracked clean in half. My mother, Diane, floated from child to child as if starring in her own holiday commercial. She wore a pastel sweater dress, hair curled, lipstick perfect, holding her phone at the perfect angle to capture each delighted gasp from Carla's children. "Kayla, sweetie, show Grandma again. Lift it up, yes, just like that." She didn't glance at me. She didn't glance at Leo. It was as if the two of us were part of the furniture, quiet, unobtrusive, not important enough to disturb the flow of her perfect holiday performance. Carla perched on the couch beside her husband Neil, sipping peppermint cocoa like royalty observing her subjects. "Open the big one, Mason. Mom saved the best for last." Her voice was bright and theatrical. Neil filmed the whole thing as if his kids were celebrities. No one looked at Leo, not once. He kept smiling at first, that careful, hopeful smile kids use when they're trying not to show disappointment, the kind that makes your chest hurt when you realize they're practicing bravery they shouldn't have to know yet. I leaned closer. "You okay, buddy?" He nodded quickly. "Yeah, I'm just watching." More gifts flew around the room. Kenmore robotics kit, VR goggles, limited edition Lego sets taller than Leo's legs. The whole place looked like a toy store explosion, glitter and ribbons everywhere. Through it all, Leo sat obediently still, eyes tracing shiny boxes like he was afraid of hoping too loudly. I kept waiting for my mother to notice, waiting for a pause, a glance, a flicker of awareness, but she never broke stride. "Ruby, sweetheart, open Grandma's favorite one." She clapped when the little girl held up a plush unicorn almost the size of her. I scanned the tree again, checking every tag left under the branches. Kayla, Mason, Ruby, Carla, Neil. Not one card with Leo's name. Not one small package tucked behind another. Nothing. The last present was a bright silver box with a fat red bow. My mother handed it dramatically to Kayla, who squealed and tore into it as if competing for a prize. Leo stared so hard at that box I could almost feel his breath catch. When it opened to reveal a tablet with a shimmering case, the room erupted in applause and happy chaos. And Leo whispered, barely audible, Did she forget me, Mom?" I swallowed. My heart felt like it had been dipped in ice water. Carla leaned over the arm of the couch, pretending to tidy up scraps of wrapping paper, and murmured, loud enough for me to hear, "I told you Nora would get dramatic if Leo didn't get something big." Neil smirked. My jaw tightened. Leo didn't react. He was still staring at the empty space beneath the tree. My mother straightened up, brushing glitter from her sleeves as if she'd completed some noble duty. "All right, everyone, breakfast in 30 minutes. I looked at Leo. His small shoulders, a little hunched, his hands clenched inside his sleeves, his face still trying to be brave. I understood then that if I stayed 1 minute longer, he would carry this moment in his body for years. So I stood up. "Leo," I said softly, Go get your jacket. He blinked up at me. Now? Now. Carla twisted around, offended. What are you doing? I didn't answer. I crouched down, helped Leo into his coat. His fingers were trembling a little, so I zipped it for him, smoothing the fabric over his chest. He leaned into the motion, letting me steady him. My mother finally tore her eyes from her phone. Nora, for heaven's sake, leaving already? We're just getting started. I held Leo's hand and walked toward the door without responding. She followed, heels tapping sharply on the hardwood. Don't be ridiculous, I'll buy him something tomorrow. Kids forget presents in a week. I turned the knob. Cold winter air hit my face like a truth I'd been avoiding for years. Leo stepped outside, his small boots crunching in the snow. My mother wrapped her arms around herself and said sharply, Nora, stop being dramatic. You're making a scene. I looked at her for one long second. Not angry, not pleading, just done. We're going home, Mom, she scoffed. Fine, but don't expect me to chase after you. I shut the door behind us before she could say more. The world outside was quiet, the kind of quiet that feels honest. Snow drifted softly from the gray sky, settling on Leo's hood. He squeezed my hand as we walked across the icy porch toward the car. I opened his door, helped him climb in. He looked at me through big, glassy eyes. Mom, he whispered, did I do something wrong? I brushed his hair back gently. You didn't do anything wrong, not a single thing. Snowflakes landed on my scarf, melting instantly. Inside the house behind us, laughter still echoed. Big, bright, careless laughter that didn't belong to us. I started the car. Leo turned his face toward the window, watching the world blur white as we pulled away. Not crying, not complaining, just silent. And that silence told me something I would never forget. I wasn't leaving out of anger. I was leaving because my son deserved a world where love didn't have conditions. As we drove down the hill that led away from my mother's house, I realized this Christmas morning would be the last time we ever stepped inside that home as a family. I didn't slam the door. I didn't shout. I didn't create a scene. I simply walked away. And somewhere between the snow-covered pines and the long, empty road home, a cold, steady truth settled into my chest. I wasn't done walking away. This was only the first step. I didn't speak for most of the drive home, not because I didn't have words, but because every thought I had came out sharp enough to cut skin. The windshield wipers slid back and forth, pushing snow off the glass in long, slow strokes. The quiet rhythm of it felt steadier than anything inside me. Leo sat in the back seat, leaning his forehead against the window, watching the blur of pine trees slip by. He wasn't crying, he wasn't pouting, he wasn't asking questions. And somehow that was worse than all of it combined. When a child goes completely still, that's when you know something inside them has been bent in a way you can't undo. We pulled into our driveway just before noon. The sky hung heavy and pale, as if the world itself hadn't woken up yet. Leo unbuckled his seatbelt and walked inside ahead of me. No running, no holiday excitement, just the small sound of his socks brushing the floor as he made his way down the hallway. He closed his bedroom door gently behind him. Not a slam, not even a click, just a quiet, soft thud that hollowed out something inside my chest. I set the keys on the kitchen counter and stood there for a long moment. The house felt distant, like a place we used to live but hadn't truly come home to in a while. I listened to the silence, the kind that shouldn't exist on Christmas morning, not when you have a 7-year-old. My hand trembled slightly as I reached for the kettle. Maybe a cup of tea would calm me down. Maybe heat would stop the cold bloom of anger in my stomach. I filled the kettle and set it on the stove, but I never turned the burner on. Something in me snapped. Not loud, not dramatic. Just clean, precise, final. I walked straight to my office, closed the door halfway, and sat down in front of my laptop. My reflection flashed briefly in the black screen. Tired eyes, red cheeks, jaw clenched tight. I opened the computer and clicked into the folder labeled Estate Planning. I hadn't opened it in 6 months. The documents glowed on the screen. Life insurance, retirement accounts, the living trust I painstakingly built to ensure Leo would be protected if anything ever happened to me. Back then, I made choices out of habit, out of childhood loyalty, out of obligation. My mother, Diane Ellington, beneficiary. My sister, Carla Winslow, contingent beneficiary. Her children, secondary distribution. Leo was listed, yes, but so were the people who forgot him so easily it barely seemed to register in their minds. I stared at the screen until my jaw stopped trembling. Then I began typing. Effective immediately, I am removing Diane Ellington and Carla Winslow as beneficiaries from all accounts and policies under my name. I typed it slowly, deliberately, line by line, word by word, like I was stitching something shut. I adjusted the distribution. Primary beneficiary, Leo Ellington. 80% secondary beneficiary, Silver Pine Children's Foundation. 20% a clean split. A future that didn't include anyone who treated my son like background noise. I signed digitally, dated it, December 25th, sent it to my attorney with the subject line, Urgent Update. A minute later, a confirmation pinged. Then a second, then a third. The kettle finally whistled from the kitchen, but I didn't move to turn it off. My phone lit up on the desk beside me. Incoming call, Dad. I stared at the screen for 4 rings before answering. Hey, he said immediately. Not Merry Christmas, not how's Leo? He dove straight into what he wanted. Listen, my transmission's dying. The shop quoted me $3,200. Can you spot me till next month? I closed my eyes. He had borrowed money from me for 5 straight years. Car repairs, medical bills, overdue rent, unexpected emergencies, every time the same promise, I'll pay you back. Not once had a dollar returned to me. No, I said. Silence. Then a scoff. What do you mean, no? I mean no, I can't help anymore. You're just mad about this morning. I'm done, I said. Done paying to be everyone's backup plan while my son gets treated like he doesn't matter. My father inhaled sharply. Kids forget presents in a week. You're blowing this way out of proportion. I hung up before he could say anything else. The kettle shrieked louder, loud enough to make the walls vibrate. I walked to the kitchen, turned it off, and just stood there, hands braced against the counter. My phone buzzed again. I didn't look at it. By 6 that evening, I had 30 unread texts and 47 missed calls. Carla, Diane, Dad, Neil, even numbers I didn't recognize. I didn't listen to a single voicemail. When the clock hit 7:15, I finally walked down the hallway to Leo's room. The door was cracked open slightly. I pushed it gently and found him sitting cross-legged on the floor, coloring a picture of a superhero. Cape, mask, all bold primary colors. Hey, buddy, I said softly. He didn't look up right away, but when he did, his eyes were calm. Too calm. Are we going back to Grandma's? He asked. No, I said. Not for a while. He nodded, not relieved, not upset, just accepting, as if he'd already known the answer. He went back to coloring, staying carefully inside the lines. I watched him for a long moment, feeling both proud and devastated. When he finished the page, he held it up. Do you like it? It's perfect, I whispered. He smiled just a little, then put the drawing aside and crawled onto his bed. He pulled his blanket up to his chin, eyes drifting toward the window like he was still watching snow fall on a world that had forgotten him. I sat beside him, brushing his hair back. Merry Christmas, Leo, I said. He whispered, Merry Christmas, Mom. I waited until his breathing steadied and he slipped into sleep. Then I rose quietly, turned off his light, and closed the door. The house was silent again, but this time it didn't hurt. It felt like a border closing, a choice being made, a line I should have drawn years ago. Back in my office, I opened my email. My financial advisor had responded. All beneficiary changes have been updated, effective immediately. I leaned back in my chair, exhaling slowly. They had forgotten my son. But I would not forget a single thing they had done. And if they wanted to call it dramatic, ungrateful, selfish, fine. Let them talk. While they made excuses, I made decisions. While they wrapped gifts for children I didn't raise, I rewrote my son's future. And on the night of December 25th, with snow dusting the world outside and my son sleeping peacefully for the first time in weeks, I made myself one quiet promise. This was only the beginning of the life I would rebuild for him. I found myself staring at the steam rising from my untouched mug of tea long after it had gone cold. The house was quiet except for the soft hum of the heater and the faint rustling of the pine wreath hanging on the front door. Leo had fallen asleep on the couch, curled up on his side, one hand tucked under his cheek and the other wrapped around his worn astronaut plushie. He looked peaceful, but only because exhaustion had carried him there. The day had taken something from him, something I wasn't going to let anyone steal again. My phone buzzed on the counter. Another missed call, then another. I didn't even bother checking the number. I wasn't answering. Not tonight. Not anymore. I carried the cold tea to the sink, set the mug down, and stood there, breathing in the silence. It was a different kind of silence than the one at my mother's house. This one wasn't empty. It was a pause, a reset, a moment between who I had been and who I was about to become. I walked to my office, opened the laptop again, and saw the updated beneficiary documents glowing on the screen, waiting for final confirmation. For a long moment I just sat there, staring at my own name on the page. Then I clicked, Confirm. A message popped up. Are you sure you want to proceed? Yes, I was sure. As soon as I hit Submit, a new email appeared from my attorney. We'll need to verify everything by video call. Another popped in. This change will override all previous designations. Then a third, please prepare to confirm your identity. I brushed my hair back, straightened the collar of my sweater, and clicked the meeting link. The camera flickered on. Attorney Marlene Holt appeared, a woman in her 40s with steel-gray hair pulled into a low bun. Her glasses reflected the glow of the screen. Good evening, Nora, she said. Good evening. I see you're making significant adjustments to your estate plan. Yes. Might I ask what prompted such a complete removal of your mother and sister? I thought of the 36 bright, shining gifts, the ribbons, the shrieks of joy, and Leo sitting perfectly still, waiting for just one moment of being seen. It's simple, I said. My son deserves a family that shows up. Marlene nodded without pressing further. She asked me a list of verification questions, had me hold up my ID, repeat a few statements, then pressed Approve on her end. All changes are now active, she said. Is there anything else you need tonight? No, I said. This was enough. We ended the call. I shut the laptop, feeling the weight of a door closing behind me. For the first time in years, I didn't feel guilty. I felt aligned, like a compass I didn't know was broken had suddenly swung north. The couch creaked softly, and I turned to see Leo stirring awake. His hair stuck up in every direction, and he blinked slowly, disoriented. Mama? He whispered. I'm right here, I said, moving toward him. He rubbed his eyes with small fists, then crawled into my lap without a word. His body was warm and solid and heartbreakingly small. I wrapped my arms around him, rocking slightly. What were you doing? He murmured into my shoulder. I was making sure you'll always be taken care of. He nodded like he understood. Maybe he did, in some way deeper than language. Kids know the shape of safety, even when they don't know how to name it. Are we seeing Grandma again? He asked quietly. I hesitated. Not for a while. Another small nod. He pressed his cheek against my chest and exhaled softly, the air brushing my collarbone. Something loosened in me, something I hadn't realized was tight. You're safe, I whispered. I promise you're safe. He closed his eyes again, and in less than a minute he was asleep. I carried him to his room, tucked him under the blankets, and kissed the top of his head. Then I turned off the light and pulled the door almost closed, leaving a sliver of hallway glow spilling across the carpet. My phone buzzed again, and again, and again. I didn't look. Instead, I walked back into the kitchen, poured the cold tea out, and filled the mug with fresh water. The kettle hissed softly as it heated. Outside, snow fell in slow spirals under the streetlight. When the kettle whistled, I made a new cup, then set it aside as the screen of my phone lit up across the room. Mom, 16 missed calls. Carla, 14 missed calls. Dad, 18 missed calls. Neil, 5 missed calls. Dozens of messages, fragments flashing across the preview window. Call me now. You're overreacting, Nora. You're hurting Mom. You owe us an explanation. This isn't what families do. I picked up my phone, stared at the glowing screen, then placed it face down. I wasn't obligated to respond. Not anymore. The heater clicked off. The house fell into a deep, comfortable quiet. Then the phone buzzed one more time, vibrating across the counter. I turned it over just enough to see the sender, Carla. I didn't open the message, but the preview line was enough. If you don't talk to us soon, we will escalate this. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. My first thought wasn't fear. It was clarity. They didn't want reconciliation. They wanted control. And for the first time, control was something they no longer had. I stepped away from the counter, holding the mug between my hands. Warmth seeped into my palms, grounding me. I walked to the living room and sat on the couch, the same place Leo had fallen asleep hours before. Through the window, the sky had shifted into a deep nighttime blue. Snow continued drifting, catching in the glow of the streetlight like floating embers. The phone buzzed again, another message from Carla. I didn't lift it. Instead, I breathed in the warm air of my own home, feeling everything settle into place. The anger, the hurt, the years of being overlooked, dismissed, and expected to swallow every slight. A different kind of strength settled into me now, quiet, steady, mature. Not the strength that comes from fighting, the strength that comes from choosing not to participate anymore. My son was asleep in a house that loved him. The documents were updated. The boundaries were drawn. Let them escalate. Let them rage. Let them spin their stories. While they were busy trying to hold on to a version of me that no longer existed, I was already walking toward something better. I lifted the mug, took a slow sip, and let the warmth spread across my chest. This was not the end. This was the beginning of a new chapter, for both of us. I woke the next morning to the sound of soft knocking. 3 taps, a pause, then 2 more, the kind of knocking someone uses when they're trying to seem polite but can't hide their impatience. It was barely 8 in the morning. The winter sun hadn't even climbed over the pines behind our house yet. Leo sat at the kitchen table, still in his pajamas, legs dangling off the chair as he drew spirals of stars on a scrap of paper. His hair stuck up everywhere, and he had that sleepy, squinty look that always melted me a little. I was scrambling eggs, pretending everything was normal, pretending yesterday hadn't happened. "Who is it?" he asked, eyes drifting toward the front door. "No one we need to talk to right now," I said, keeping my voice light. I walked quietly to the entryway, peeked through the peephole, and felt my stomach drop. My mother stood on my porch in slippers and a winter coat thrown over her robe, gripping a bright red gift bag like it might explode if she held it any tighter. Her hair wasn't done, her lipstick was smudged, and she looked frantic, raw in a way she never allowed herself to be in public. She knocked again, louder this time. "Nora," she called through the door. "I know you're in there. Open up." I stepped back from the door as if her voice had weight. "Mom?" Leo whispered from the table, his pencil frozen mid-air. "Finish your drawing, sweetheart," I said. "It's okay." It wasn't okay, but he didn't need to carry this part of the day. The knocking escalated, harder, faster, no pretense now. "Nora, this is ridiculous," she said. "We need to talk about yesterday." Talk. As if that word had ever meant anything in our family except stand still while I tell you why you're wrong. She knocked again, and I stayed silent. After a full minute, she let out a long, dramatic sigh, the kind she used whenever she wanted bystanders to assume she was the victim in the situation. Then the doorbell rang twice. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I stayed perfectly still, the way you do when a storm passes close enough to your house that the windows rattle. Finally, she set the red bag on the welcome mat, wiped her hands on her robe, and stomped down the steps. She didn't look back. I waited until her car engine faded down the street before I opened the door. Cold winter air swept inside. The gift bag sat alone on the step, its glossy finish catching the pale morning light. Red tissue paper poked out the top, bright and loud against the snow. I crouched down and picked it up. The weight of it felt wrong, too light, too uncertain. Inside the bag were 3 items: a navy hoodie 2 sizes too big, a stuffed bear that still smelled like plastic, and a small toy car. At the bottom sat a crumpled receipt. I smoothed it between my fingers. Purchased at 8:19 that morning. Not a real apology, just panic, just shame wrapped in dollar store tissue paper. I carried the bag to the kitchen. Leo looked up from his drawing. "Was that Grandma?" "Yeah," I said, setting the bag on the counter. "What did she want?" "She brought these." He peeked inside, expression unreadable. He didn't reach for anything. "Did she buy them for me?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "This morning." He nodded slowly. "Oh." His voice didn't waver, it didn't break, it just accepted. And that acceptance hurt more than any tears. "Do you want to keep them?" I asked. He shook his head. "No." I didn't ask why, I didn't need to. He'd already lived the answer. After breakfast, I grabbed my keys, and the 2 of us drove to the Good Neighbors Donation Center across town. Snow fell lightly, dusting the windshield in soft flakes. Leo held the gift bag in his lap, staring down at it like it was something fragile and sad. Inside the center, a volunteer with kind eyes and silver-streaked hair greeted us. "Holiday donations?" she asked. I nodded. "Something like that." Leo stepped forward and placed the bag on the counter. "I hope another kid likes it," he said. The woman smiled at him warmly. "I'm sure they will, sweetheart." Back in the car, Leo buckled himself in, then looked out the window. "Mom," he said quietly. "Yeah? Did Grandma forget me yesterday because I'm not fun enough?" My throat tightened. "Leo," I said, "you are everything any child should be. Kind, thoughtful, brave. What happened yesterday says nothing about you. It says everything about the people who forgot to look at you." He didn't say anything else. He just held his astronaut plushie a little closer. We drove home in silence, the kind that wasn't heavy this time, just careful. As we pulled into our driveway, I noticed someone standing on the sidewalk between our house and the Mackenzie's place next door. A bundled figure in a knitted hat and puffy coat leaning on a cane. Mrs. Dougherty. She'd lived on this street for 40 years, babysat half the kids on the block, baked cookies for every holiday. She looked over when she heard our car and lifted a hand. I helped Leo out of the car, and we walked toward the front door. "Nora," she called gently. "A moment." I turned to her. "Morning, Mrs. D. Everything okay?" She studied me with eyes that had seen too much life to miss anything. "I saw your mother leave here earlier," she said. "She didn't look herself." I exhaled softly. "It's been a long week." She nodded knowingly. "I remember when you were Leo's age," she said. "Your mother favored Carla even back then. You never asked for much, but you rarely got it. I've always wondered how that shaped you." The words hit hard, honest and unexpected. "I'm sorry," she continued softly. "Some patterns go on so long, people forget they're doing harm." Leo tugged at my coat sleeve. "Mom, I'm cold." "I know, sweetheart," I said. "Let's go inside." Mrs. Dougherty stepped closer. "If you ever need a witness or someone to speak to what I've seen over the years, don't hesitate to ask." It caught me off guard. A small, unexpected kindness in the middle of a day I thought would be full of nothing but cleanup. "Thank you," I said. Really?" She nodded once and shuffled back toward her house. Inside, the house felt warmer than it had that morning. I hung up Leo's coat, then mine. My phone buzzed from the kitchen counter. I didn't want to look, but some instinct made me check. 3 new messages from Carla. The last one read, "If you don't explain yourself soon, we're going to take this further. Don't say we didn't warn you." I stared at the words, the threat buried beneath faux concern. Leo curled up on the couch with his drawing, humming softly to himself. His safety, his softness, his whole heart, everything about him felt precious and breakable, in a way I couldn't ignore anymore. I put my phone face down on the counter, took a slow breath, and let the truth settle over me like snow on quiet branches. They didn't come here to make things right. They came because I stopped playing my part. The kettle clicked on automatically, warming the air with gentle steam. I walked into the living room and sat beside my son, watching him draw constellations with steady little strokes. The world outside could rage as much as it wanted. Inside this house, I was building something different, something safe. Carla's threat lingered in the back of my mind, a storm cloud forming on the horizon. But I didn't answer. I didn't respond. Instead, I leaned back against the couch, closed my eyes, and breathed in the quiet. Let them escalate, I thought. I was ready. Leo was unusually quiet the next afternoon, the kind of quiet that isn't peace but something heavier, like he was carrying a question inside his chest and didn't know if he was allowed to ask it. I found him at the dining table, legs dangling, head bent over a piece of paper where he'd drawn a small house and 3 stick children surrounded by piles of boxes. On the far left edge of the page, almost hidden, was a 4th figure. No gifts, no smile, just standing. My breath caught. "You drew this today?" He nodded without looking up. "Just remembering. Remembering." That word twisted something in my stomach. 7-year-olds aren't supposed to remember. They're supposed to live in the present, soaked in joy, not replaying moments of being forgotten. I pulled out the chair beside him. "Hey," I said softly. "How about we make your room feel a little more... you? Something new, something fun?" He looked up then, eyes searching my face. "Like, redoing it?" "Exactly. You get to pick everything." He blinked, surprised. "Everything?" "Everything," I said. "The color, the bed, the decorations, all of it." A slow smile unfurled across his face, fragile at first, then blooming fully. "Can I pick the paint?" "Yes," I said. "That's the whole point." We grabbed our coats, and he tugged his astronaut plush along with him, as if it were his emotional compass. The drive to the hardware store wasn't long, but the silence between us felt lighter this time. Anticipatory, not bleak. Inside, the aisles were lined with hundreds of color swatches, hanging like tiny paper flags. Leo walked between them slowly, fingers brushing across the edges. Twice he paused, twice he shook his head. Then he stopped before a deep, rich shade of blue. "This one," he said, lifting the swatch carefully. "What do you like about it?" I asked. He studied it as though the answer mattered. "It looks like space, not the scary kind, the kind where you can breathe." Something inside me softened so suddenly I had to steady myself. "Space blue it is," I said. We added paint rollers, brushes, drop cloths, glow-in-the-dark stars, and a pack of planet stickers to the cart. When we checked out, the cashier smiled down at Leo. "Big project?" she asked. "Big room," Leo corrected. "Big change." His tone was simple, but there was meaning beneath it, a kind of bravery I hadn't taught him but admired all the same. At home, we transformed into a tiny renovation crew. We dragged furniture to the center of the room and spread plastic sheets across the floor. I opened the paint can, and the color rose to the surface in a glossy swirl. Leo dipped his brush in too much paint at once, splattering a blob onto the wall. He gasped. "I messed up." "It's okay," I said, guiding his hand. "Painting isn't about being perfect. It's about trying. He nodded and tried again. The second stroke came out smoother. By the 8th, he was humming. We painted for hours, pausing only when our arms got tired or our fingers cramped. He smeared blue paint on his cheek at one point, leaving a streak like a warrior mark. I didn't tell him. It was too endearing to wipe off. By late afternoon, one wall was done completely, 2 others were halfway there, and the room smelled like fresh beginnings. Leo stepped back, hands on his hips. "It looks good," he said. "It looks amazing," I answered. He grinned. A real smile, unguarded and bright, a piece of him coming back online. I tucked him onto the couch after dinner, where he promptly fell asleep mid-cartoon, his hair still carrying faint specks of blue paint. I covered him with a blanket and tidied up the brushes and trays. When I walked back into the hallway, something on the floor caught my eye. A small slip of folded paper sticking out of Leo's hoodie pocket. Curious, I pulled it out gently. It was a rough draft written in his small, careful handwriting. At the top, in pencil, "Family is who remembers you." I pressed the paper to my chest, closing my eyes. Children don't lie. They feel, purely, honestly. And the fact that he had written this alone, quietly, without showing anyone. I breathed in slowly, letting the words settle into me like ink on skin. The next morning, my inbox pinged with a message from Ms. Rayburn, Leo's teacher. "Hi, Nora. Could we speak privately after school today? It's about an assignment Leo wrote yesterday." My heart lurched, not in fear of trouble, but in fear of sadness. I replied yes, and spent the day thinking of that single line he had written. At 3:15, I arrived at the classroom as kids poured out, laughing and bumping backpacks together. Leo held my hand as we walked inside. Ms. Rayburn smiled kindly. "Hi, Leo. Can I talk to your mom for a moment?" Leo nodded and wandered to the reading corner, flipping through a picture book. Ms. Rayburn handed me a paper. "He wrote this today." At the top, "Who shows up?" His words were simple, but devastating. My mom shows up. She makes breakfast. She painted my room blue with stars. She goes to my games and reads with me. She remembers me. My grandma forgot me on Christmas. My mom didn't forget. That's the difference. My vision blurred. I blinked hard, trying to steady myself. Ms. Rayburn spoke gently. "He's resilient, Nora. Incredibly so. But I wanted you to see this because it means he trusts you more than anything else in his world." I nodded. I couldn't speak yet. Leo wandered over, holding the book to his chest. "Did I do okay, Mom?" "You did perfect," I managed, my voice thick. He slipped his hand into mine. "Can we get pizza for dinner?" "Yes," I whispered, "we absolutely can." That evening, we sat in our favorite booth at the pizza place on Maple Street. He had pepperoni slices stacked almost dangerously high, and he giggled when cheese stretched halfway to the table. Sauce smeared across his chin, and he looked lighter, as if the blue walls we painted had peeled away something heavy inside him. When we got home, he ran straight to his room, gasping at how the dried paint looked even richer than before. "It's like night," he said. "Want to add the stars?" He nodded eagerly. Together we arranged the glow-in-the-dark stickers, mapping constellations across his ceiling. Orion, Cassiopeia, the Big Dipper. Leo insisted on adding a shooting star right above his bed. "For wishing," he said simply. Later, as he lay down and the ceiling glowed soft green, he whispered, "I like it better than Grandma's house." "I'm glad," I whispered back. He fell asleep with his face tilted up toward the stars, breathing slow and even. I stood at his door for a long time, watching the light flicker softly over his hair. At midnight, when the house had settled into its quiet hum, I checked my phone. 17 missed calls, 16 texts, the group chat blinking with new messages. "This is childish, Nora. Your mother is devastated. You're being cruel. Talk to us or we'll have to take action." I opened the Christmas video on my phone, the one showing 36 gifts, 3 squealing children, and 1 little boy sitting alone in the corner of the frame. I uploaded it to the family group chat with 1 sentence. "This is why." Then I left the chat. I blocked every number that wasn't essential to my life. I locked the phone, walked back to Leo's doorway, and watched him sleep under his star-covered sky. This was the family I chose. This was the child who trusted me. This was the life I was rebuilding. And I knew, without doubt or hesitation, that everything I was doing, every boundary I set, every silence I held, was the right thing. For him. For us. Leo hesitated at the classroom door the next morning, his small hand tightening around mine. Kids were running past us, laughing, zipping up coats, dropping lunchboxes, bouncing with the kind of carefree energy he usually loved. But today he stood still, shoulders tense. "What if Ms. Rayburn didn't like what I wrote?" he whispered. "She will," I said gently, "and even if she didn't, telling the truth is never wrong." He nodded, though the movement was small and uncertain. When he finally stepped inside, his eyes stayed glued to me until the last possible second before the classroom swallowed him up. I waited near the bulletin board until the final bell rang, and then stepped into the classroom. The room smelled like crayons and the faint sweetness of the hand sanitizer they kept in pump bottles by the door. Ms. Rayburn greeted me with a soft, understanding smile. "I'm glad you could stay for a moment," she said. Leo glanced at me from the reading corner, a picture book open in his lap, but his attention pinned entirely on us. Ms. Rayburn led me toward her desk and picked up a sheet of notebook paper. My stomach tightened even before she handed it to me. "Leo wrote this yesterday," she said softly. Across the top of the page, in careful pencil strokes, were the words, "Who shows up?" The rest of the page was pure truth. "My mom shows up. She helps me with my homework. She makes breakfast. She paints my room with stars. She comes to every school thing. My grandma used to show up. She forgot me on Christmas. My mom didn't forget. She never forgets." That's the difference. I didn't realize I was gripping the paper too tightly until I forced my fingers to relax. My throat felt thick. "He wasn't writing for a grade," Ms. Rayburn said. "He was writing because he needed to." I swallowed slowly. "He's processing." "He's doing it beautifully," she said. "And bravely." Behind us, I heard quiet footsteps. Leo had wandered closer, still holding the picture book like a shield. "Mom," he asked, "did I write bad?" I crouched to his eye level and put an arm around him. "You wrote honestly, and that takes more courage than most grown-ups have." He looked at Ms. Rayburn for confirmation, and she nodded warmly. Some of the tension in his shoulders eased, and he leaned lightly against me. "We'd like to encourage his writing," Ms. Rayburn said. "Maybe get him involved in the science club, too. He shows a lot of curiosity." Leo's eyes lit up. "Science club? You'd be perfect for it," she said. He nodded slowly, hope blooming across his expression like sunrise through clouds. We thanked her and walked hand in hand out of the building. The cold air bit at our cheeks, but Leo didn't seem bothered. He kept kicking small piles of snow on the sidewalk, humming to himself. My phone rang just as we reached the car. My boss's name, Elisa Marshall, flashed across the screen. "Give me a second, buddy," I said, answering. "Hi, Elisa." "Nora," she said, sounding unusually cheerful. "I'm glad I caught you. I wanted to say, you've been doing incredible work these past months. Organized, steady, creative. And your last report? Outstanding." I blinked, taken aback. "Thank you," I said, unsure where this was going. "We're promoting you," she said, "Senior Strategy Coordinator." The cold wind didn't feel cold anymore. "Wait, really?" "You earned it," Elisa said. "Take the weekend to celebrate with Leo. You deserve something good." When I hung up, Leo was bouncing lightly on his toes. "What happened? What happened?" "I got a promotion," I said. His eyes widened. "Does that mean, can we get pizza tonight?" I laughed. "Yes, it definitely means pizza." He threw both arms up in victory and shouted, "Yes!" to the empty parking lot. We got pizza, pepperoni, extra cheese, the same booth we always sat in. Leo talked non-stop about science club, about planets and telescopes and black holes he wanted to learn about. Sauce smeared across his chin, his face bright and open. For the first time since Christmas morning, he looked light. At home, he ran to his room and flipped on the switch for the glow-in-the-dark stars we'd just put up the night before. "Look, Mom," he said, lying back on his pillow to stare upward. "I see it," I said. "It's beautiful." He pointed at a streak of stickers forming a curved tail. "That's the comet. I put it right there so I can wish on it." "What are you wishing for?" I asked. He thought for a long moment. "For things to stay like this." My heart pulled tight, warm and aching. When he finally drifted to sleep, I tucked his astronaut plush under his arm, kissed his forehead, and left the door slightly open. I should have gone to bed. It had been a long day, and my body was heavy with the kind of tired that comes from emotional rebuilding, but curiosity tugged at me. I checked my phone. 32 unread messages. The family group chat was exploding. "You humiliated us. You're tearing this family apart. Your mother is devastated. This is ridiculous for one mistake. Kids don't remember Christmas anyway. You should be ashamed." I scrolled slowly, each message more dismissive, more manipulative than the last. Once, these words would have crushed me, made me doubt myself, made me feel selfish for wanting fairness for my child. Not now. I opened the video from Christmas, 36 gifts, the chaos of wrapping paper flying, my mother's laughter, Carla's bragging, Neil's filming. And in the corner of the frame, Leo, small and quiet and waiting for nothing. I hit upload. "This is why," I wrote. Then I left the group. Blocked every number except Aunt Lorraine's. Set my phone face down on the counter. The heater clicked softly, filling the house with warm air. In the quiet, I walked to Leo's doorway again. He was asleep under the starry ceiling we'd made together. His small hand rested on his pillow, relaxed now, not clenched the way it had been in my mother's living room. I leaned against the door frame and let myself breathe. This peace wasn't accidental, it wasn't luck, it wasn't temporary. It was the result of choices. Choices to protect him. Choices to rebuild him. Choices to show up for him in every way my own mother never did for me. And I knew, without needing anyone's validation, without needing forgiveness from people who never gave it, that we were finally on the right path. The world outside could judge. They could gossip. They could lie. But inside this house, under this painted sky of stars, my son was healing, and I wasn't going back. The first letter showed up on a Thursday morning, slipped halfway under the front door like something that didn't want to be found but needed to be. I almost stepped on it on my way to the kitchen. A pastel envelope, the kind you find in the bargain section of the pharmacy greeting card aisle. My mother's handwriting, looping, dramatic, unmistakable, curled across the front. I didn't open it. Not right away. Leo was in the living room arranging the glow-in-the-dark planets we'd bought into a pattern only he understood. He hummed quietly to himself, the kind of absent, soft sound he only made when he felt safe. I didn't want to break that spell. So I slid the envelope onto the counter and poured him cereal instead. He looked up at the sound of the box hitting the table. "Mom, someone sent a letter?" "Just something from Grandma," I said lightly. "We'll look at it later." He didn't ask more. He'd already learned that letters from my mother were never simple. After he left for school, I stood alone in the kitchen staring at the envelope for a long moment before finally tearing it open. The paper inside smelled faintly of my mother's perfume, floral and sharp. "Nora," it began, "you're overreacting. Children don't remember small mistakes. I love Leo, and you know it. You are blowing a minor oversight into something catastrophic, and it's hurting everyone. Please stop this before you ruin our family for good." At the bottom was a line written harder, the pen pressing into the paper enough to dent it. "If you continue down this path, You'll force me to make choices I don't want to make. I folded the letter carefully, not out of sentiment, but because rage makes your hands shake. That was the first. The second arrived the next day. Another pastel envelope, another performance. This time the tone was softer at first. Sweetheart, I miss you. I miss my grandson. I don't know why you're punishing me. I made one mistake. One. You don't throw family away over one lapse. Then it turned. You're acting like some kind of martyr. Leo needs stability. He needs a full family, not just you. The word just burned through the paper like acid. I dropped the letter into the folder I'd started keeping in my office. Evidence, proof, patterns, a lifetime printed in ink. I was still sliding it inside when I heard a small voice behind me. Mom? Leo stood in the doorway, holding the hoodie he'd worn to school. His eyes drifted toward the letter in my hand. Is that from Grandma again? Yes. His gaze dropped to the floor. Did she say something mean? I came closer, kneeling so we were eye level. She said something wrong. That's different. He nodded, like that answer gave him permission to keep breathing normally. What does the red line mean? He asked suddenly, pointing to the back of the unopened envelope still sitting on the counter. My mother had drawn a crooked underline beneath the flap in red ink. I forced a steady tone. Sometimes people underline things when they want to be heard. But why does it look like she's angry? His question was so sincere it felt like a punch to the ribs. Because, I said quietly, some adults don't know how to express their feelings the right way. He accepted that with a small sigh, then wandered back to the living room. A moment later, I heard him whisper to his astronaut plushie, I would never write like that to my mom. My throat tightened. The third letter came on Saturday morning by priority mail, rushed, urgent, intentionally intimidating. The envelope was thicker, heavier. Inside, her handwriting was fiercer. Carla and I have been discussing what's best for Leo. We feel strongly that cutting us off is harming him. If you don't come to your senses soon, we will need to involve the proper channels. Leo deserves a family who cares. The last sentence made my pulse spike. A family who cares. As if I didn't show up for him every single day. As if remembering your grandson at Christmas was optional. At the bottom was the letterhead of a small law office in Riverstone. Not a full petition. Yet. But a threat. A warning. A promise. I slipped that letter into the folder, too. The folder was getting thicker. By Sunday, I stopped feeling startled when envelopes came. They were as predictable as the mail truck itself. Every morning, another pastel apology wrapped in blame, another plea wrapped in threat. Think of your mother's health. You've broken her heart. Leo will resent you one day. You aren't the victim. That last line was underlined twice, hard. I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I kept filling the folder. One afternoon, while Leo was working on his solar system model for Science Club, I opened the latest letter and scanned it quickly, already expecting the mix of guilt and manipulation. But this one was different. Nora, I won't be ignored like this. A grandmother has rights. The moment I read that sentence, a cold ripple moved through me. Rights. She had used the word rights. Not love, not connection. Rights. Across the room, Leo looked up from his model. Mom, why do you look like that? I put the letter down immediately. Just thinking. He patted over, holding a small plastic Saturn. Are we okay? Yes, I said. We are absolutely okay. He nodded, satisfied, and returned to his project. But he paused again, halfway across the room, turning back with a question heavy enough to stop my breath. Mom, do I have to tell Grandma good things so she won't be mad? I stood up so quickly my chair scraped the floor. I crossed the room and cupped his face gently. No, I said. You don't ever have to say anything you don't want to say. Not to anyone. He blinked, eyes wide, and then he leaned into my hands with a slow, relieved exhale. Later that afternoon, after Leo fell asleep on the couch mid-episode of a space documentary, I sat at my office table and spread out the letters like a grim timeline. Each one a brick in the wall of everything she refused to see. I took photos of all of them, organized them by date, scanned and uploaded them to my drive. Documentation wasn't paranoia, it was protection. As I was labeling the files, my phone buzzed. "Aunt Lorraine." I answered immediately. "Are you holding up?" she asked. "I'm trying," I said. "She keeps sending letters. They're getting worse." "I know," she said. "She called me yesterday sobbing and furious. I told her favoritism has consequences, but she didn't want to hear it." Lorraine hesitated. "She's thinking about taking legal steps, Nora." "I figured," I said. "If it comes to that," she continued gently, "I'll testify. I've seen the way things have been since you were little." Warmth filled my chest, gratitude mixed with grief. "Thank you." "Don't thank me. It's simply the truth." After we hung up, I walked to the couch and brushed a hand through Leo's hair. He stirred slightly, but didn't wake. He deserved better than this emotional tug-of-war. He deserved peace. The next morning, when I opened my mailbox, I found another envelope, but this one was unmistakably official. White, crisp, bearing a law office seal. A chill washed over me. Before I could even open it, my phone vibrated from my coat pocket. A new message from Carla. "Don't panic when the letter arrives, we warned you." I stood completely still on the front porch, snowflakes melting against my coat. Their letters weren't just words anymore. This was war, and they had just declared it. The envelope felt heavier than paper should. It sat on my kitchen table like a stone, thick and official, the embossed seal of Price and Dale family legal practice, stamped across the corner. Snow dripped from my boots onto the floor as I stood staring down at it, unable to bring myself to touch it. Some part of me already knew what was inside. Some part of me knew this wasn't an apology or an explanation or even a plea. This was a move, a choice, a declaration, and one I couldn't ignore. I finally slid a finger under the flap, tore it open, and unfolded the stack of documents. The heading glared up at me in bold letters. Petition for grandparent visitation rights in the matter of the minor child. Leo Ellington. My breath left me in one sharp, painful exhale. Behind me, Leo sat on the living room rug, building a Lego spaceship with focused intensity. He had no idea that a battle had just been brought to our doorstep. No idea that someone who forgot him on Christmas morning believed she now had a legal right to claim him. I skimmed the pages. My mother, Diane, claimed that I had unreasonably restricted access, that I was isolating Leo, that I was damaging his emotional development by denying him a stable extended family. Then came the part that made my stomach clench. Petitioner believes respondent is emotionally unstable and making decisions not in the child's best interest. I closed my eyes. They weren't just trying to insert themselves into Leo's life. They were trying to undermine me as a mother. And at the bottom of the page, in neat type, failure to respond may result in temporary visitation granted to petitioner. My hands shook, not out of fear, but out of something colder, sharper, a clarity edged with fury. "Mom?" Leo's soft voice floated from behind me. "Are you okay?" I turned, folding the papers before he could see the header. "Just reading mail, sweetheart." "Is it bad mail?" he asked, instinctively knowing more than he should. "Not for you," I said. "That's what matters." I tucked the petition into a folder and grabbed my phone. My fingers dialed the number from memory. Attorney Marlene Holt answered on the second ring. "Nora?" "I got the letter," I said. "It's a petition." "Bring it in today," she said with instant professional calm. "We're going to fight this." I glanced toward the living room. "She's accusing me of isolating him." "Accusations aren't facts," Marlene said. "Do you have documentation?" "I have everything." "Good," she said. "We'll need it." After we hung up, I pulled the large leather-bound folder from my office shelf, the one I'd started filling the moment the first guilt-soaked letter arrived. I spread its contents across the dining table. Christmas photos, screenshots of texts, saved voicemails where my mother said Leo wasn't her responsibility, the crumpled receipt from the panic gifts, the birthday card where she wrote the wrong age, the notes from Leo's teacher about his emotional processing, the letter with "You are not the victim" underlined in red, a pattern, a history, a truth they couldn't rewrite. Leo wandered in as I sorted through papers. "Are you making something?" "Yes," I said, carefully keeping the tension out of my voice. "I'm making sure our life stays peaceful." He nodded like that made perfect sense. Then he went back to his spaceship. When I arrived at Marlene's office that afternoon, she looked over the petition with a slow, controlled exhale. "They're using intimidation tactics," she said, "trying to push you into compliance before you know your rights." "They thought I'd fold," I said. Marlene lifted her eyes. "Are you going to?" "No." "Good," she said, "because we are not just defending against this, we are going to dismantle it." She flipped through the papers I brought, placing sticky notes and highlighting sections with the precision of a surgeon. When she reached the Christmas video still, her mouth tightened. "That's damning," she said. "Judges take patterns very seriously. We'll use the video, and the letters, and that birthday card. Good grief." "She didn't know his age," I said softly. "She didn't even guess close." For a moment, we sat there together in quiet understanding, the kind that forms only when truth is no longer a secret. "Court date will be set for fall," Marlene said finally. "You'll get a notice soon." 8 months. A long wait. A long shadow cast over everything. But I wasn't doing this alone. When I left the office, I called Aunt Lorraine. She picked up on the first ring. "I heard from Carla," she said. "I'm guessing you got the petition." "Yes." "I'll testify," she said immediately. "I'll tell the judge exactly what I've seen. Your mother's favoritism isn't new, Nora." I sat in my car, gripping the steering wheel with one hand. "Thank you." "Don't thank me," she said. "Thank yourself. You're protecting that boy in a way no one ever protected you." When I got home, Leo was at the dining table coloring a planet with wide, sweeping strokes. He looked up as I walked in. "Did you fix the bad mail?" he asked. "I'm working on it," I said. "But nothing's going to happen to you." He studied my face carefully. Children know when adults are avoiding truth. Children sense storms long before we name them. "Is someone trying to take me away?" he asked quietly. The world stopped moving. I crouched down in front of him and took both his hands. "No," I said firmly. "No one is taking you anywhere, I promise you. You are safe. With me. Always." His shoulders relaxed a fraction. "Okay," he whispered. That night, after he fell asleep under the soft glow of his star stickers, I turned the dining table into a war room. Documents organized, timelines drawn, labels applied. Christmas, letters, missed calls, threats, manipulation, receipts, voicemails, wrong birthday card. When I was halfway through sorting, my phone buzzed. Carla, of course. A new message flashed across the screen. "Good luck at court. Everyone knows who the unstable one is." I let out a slow, controlled breath. The woman who watched her mother heap gifts onto 3 children while ignoring mine now felt entitled to judge my stability. I didn't respond. Instead, I picked up the last document from the pile, the one that tied all of this together. The Christmas video, still. Leo sitting alone in the corner while 36 gifts piled up around his cousins, his hands folded, his smile tightening, his hope shrinking. I slid it into a clear sleeve and placed it at the top of the stack. When the judge saw that image, they would understand more in 30 seconds than any letter or speech could explain. At midnight, I finally turned off the dining room light. The evidence folder sat complete, thick and heavy with truth. This wasn't the life I wanted. This wasn't the fight I asked for. But it was the fight I would win. For Leo. For the love he deserved. For the future no one would steal from him. When I crawled into bed, my body was exhausted, but my mind was clear. They wanted a war. They were going to get one. But they had no idea who I was when it came to protecting my son. Spring crept in quietly, softening the edges of winter until the snow outside our windows melted into thin silver streams. The world felt gentler, somehow. And in that gentleness, Leo began to bloom again in ways I hadn't realized he'd been holding back. One morning, as sunlight spilled across the kitchen table, he sat eating toast and swinging his legs, humming something tuneless and bright. He hadn't hummed in months, not since before Christmas. When he finished breakfast, he wiped crumbs off his shirt and said, "Mom, last night I dreamed I was floating in space. But not alone. You were there too, and we could breathe." I felt something warm unfurl in my chest. "That sounds like a beautiful dream." He nodded with quiet certainty. It was. Outside, the world was thawing. Inside, my son was too. At school, he threw himself into science club like it was the best thing that had ever happened to him. Every day he came home with a new fact about Jupiter's storms, or Saturn's rings, or the temperature on Mercury. And every evening he added another detail to his solar system model. He painted Jupiter's bands with careful stripes, dabbed flecks onto Mars to make it look more dusty, and insisted Pluto needed space in his model, even if other people forget about it. I didn't miss the metaphor. I didn't point it out. One windy afternoon in late March, Leo came bursting through the front door with a huge smile. "Ms. Rayburn said my model is going in the hallway display." "That's amazing," I said, as he hopped out of his shoes mid-step, "and she said I'm really good at explaining things." He puffed his chest out a little. "She said I'm a natural teacher." He glowed, not because someone remembered him, but because someone saw him. I held on to that moment for days. Baseball sign-ups started in April. I wasn't sure if Leo wanted to play again. He'd been nervous around crowds lately. But when I asked, he nodded shyly. At his first practice, he stood near the back of the group, small and unsure, twisting his glove between his hands. I crouched beside him. "You're here," I whispered. "That's already brave." He didn't say anything, but he scooted a little closer to me before joining the others. The wind was sharp that day, carrying the smell of damp grass. The kids dropped balls and laughed too loudly. Coaches shouted encouragement. Parents clapped from the bleachers. It was ordinary and chaotic and comforting. When a coach tossed a practice ball toward Leo, he flinched at first, but then he reached out and caught it cleanly against his chest. His eyes widened. He looked up at me instantly, as if to ask whether it really happened. "I saw that," I called. A grin split across his face like sunrise through clouds. That's how the next few months felt. Small joys, steady growth, soft healing. He started laughing more during breakfast. He showed me doodles he made in the margins of his worksheets. He stopped asking whether Grandma was mad at us. But normalcy is a fragile visitor. It never stays long in families like mine. The letters continued. Not daily now, but often enough to prickle anxiety beneath my skin every time I checked the mailbox. Some were short. Some were frantic. Some were manipulative in ways only a mother who raised you can achieve. "You don't know how much this is killing your mother. You're traumatizing Leo by isolating him. He will grow up resenting you for this. Mark my words." Each letter went into the folder in my office. Not opened twice, not responded to. One had a line written in shaky blue pen, "You are not the victim here." I held that one for a long moment before adding it to the pile. It wasn't the accusation that stung. It was how familiar it felt, how many times I'd been cast in roles I didn't choose just so the rest of them could stay the heroes of their own stories. Leo never saw the letters. He didn't need to carry that weight. Still, he felt whispers of it. One afternoon after school, he came home quiet. He dropped his backpack beside the kitchen island and chewed his bottom lip. "What happened?" I asked. "Nothing," he said too quickly. "Leo." He shifted, then sighed. "Some kids asked why we don't go to Grandma's house anymore." My pulse tightened. "And what did you say?" I said, "Because I don't want to be somewhere people forget I exist." I froze. "What did they say?" I asked softly. He shrugged. "They said that makes sense. A 7-year-old shouldn't have to articulate a boundary that adults refuse to understand. But mine did, clearly, firmly, bravely." That night, after he fell asleep, I sat at the edge of his bed and watched his chest rise and fall. Under the soft glow of the star stickers on his ceiling, his face looked peaceful, untouched by the storm still gathering outside. I hoped it would stay that way. But peace doesn't last when guilt is chasing it. Aunt Lorraine visited one Saturday afternoon, carrying a tin of lemon bars like she used to when I was little. She hugged me tightly and whispered, "You're doing the right thing." We sat on the couch while Leo showed her his finished solar system model. She clapped and complimented him so sincerely that for a moment I felt my chest ache with gratitude. When Leo ran off to show her more drawings, Lorraine leaned toward me. "She called me yesterday," she said quietly. "Your mother. She's unraveling Nora, blaming everyone but herself." "She always has," I murmured. "I know," she sighed. "But she's also recruiting, telling the rest of the family you turned Leo against her." My jaw tightened. "I didn't turn him. He saw the truth." "I know," Lorraine repeated, squeezing my hand. "Truth doesn't need coaching." Spring rolled into summer, and for a few brief weeks everything felt manageable. We took walks by the lake. We bought ice cream from the same truck we always had. Leo learned to ride his bike without training wheels, wobbling wildly before finding balance. It was the happiest I'd seen him in months, until the day at Target. We had just finished picking out school supplies, shiny new pencils, a notebook with planets, a set of markers, and were about to grab snacks when I heard someone call my name. Carla. She wasn't alone. Her daughter, Ellie, stood beside her clutching a stuffed penguin. The moment Ellie saw Leo, she broke away from her mother and ran toward him with tears streaming down her face. "Why did you do it?" she cried. "Why did you make Grandma sad? She cried every day because of you." Leo froze. His hand tightened around the handle of the shopping cart. His face paled. I stepped between them immediately. "Ellie, sweetheart, that's not fair. That's not—" But Carla swooped in, pulling Ellie close and glaring at me. "Children shouldn't have to suffer for your drama, Nora." "Let's go," I said, keeping my voice steady and grabbing the cart. But Ellie's next words sliced the air like a knife. "My mom said you're mean," she sobbed at Leo. "She said you made Grandma sick." Leo's bottom lip trembled. I didn't—" I abandoned the cart and knelt to him. "Hey," I said firmly, "look at me." His eyes were full of fear and confusion. "Did I do something bad?" "No," I said. "You did nothing wrong. Telling the truth isn't bad. Wanting to feel loved isn't bad." Carla scoffed. "Keep telling yourself that." I stood, placing myself fully between her and my son. "We're done here." Leo clung to my arm as we walked quickly out of the store. He didn't cry until we reached the car. When the door closed behind him, he whispered, "Mom, am I allowed to feel sad?" My heart broke cleanly. "Yes," I said. "You're allowed to feel anything. Sad, angry, confused, all of it." He nodded slowly, tears tracking down his cheeks. "Okay." That night, after he fell asleep wrapped in his blanket, I sat in the living room staring at the ceiling until my phone buzzed. A message from my attorney. "The opposing counsel has filed additional claims." The peace of spring and summer had been real, but temporary, and September was coming, bringing the storm with it. The morning of the hearing arrived gray and heavy, the kind of sky that made it hard to tell where dawn ended and worry began. I barely slept the night before. Every time I closed my eyes, I replayed every letter, every accusation, every moment my mother had forgotten my son. And somewhere in the middle of all that, I saw Leo's face the day he got 0 gifts. Quiet, brave, holding himself together in a room that pretended he wasn't there. By 7:30, Leo was dressed in a button-up shirt that was slightly too big, sleeves rolled once at the cuffs. He kept smoothing the collar nervously. His hair had the stubborn little cowlick that never stayed down no matter how much water I tried. He looked small and older at the same time. "Mom?" he asked as I tied his shoes. "Do I have to talk today?" "Only if the judge asks," I said gently, "and you don't have to say anything you don't want to." He nodded slowly. "Okay." We drove in silence. The courthouse sat at the end of a long stone walkway, its columns rising like stiff shoulders against the gloomy sky. I held Leo's hand the whole way in. His palm was warm, his fingers tight around mine. Inside, everything smelled faintly of old paper and disinfectant. People whispered, doors echoed shut in the distance. Somewhere, someone typed rapidly on a keyboard. Life happening normally around us, even though ours wasn't normal today. We found our courtroom, family court, hearing room C. My attorney, Marlene Holt, was already there, seated at the table with a binder so thick it looked like a textbook. She stood when she saw us. "Hey, Leo," she said softly. "You look very sharp today." He gave a shy smile and pressed closer to my side. "We're ready," I told her. "I know," she said quietly, "and you're going to be okay. The evidence is clear." Her confidence steadied me more than she realized. When the door on the opposite side opened, my stomach tightened. My mother walked in wearing a navy suit she'd probably bought just for this. Her hair was perfectly styled, her makeup carefully done, her expression full of wounded dignity. Behind her came Carla, arms folded, jaw clenched, and her husband trailing like a shadow. My father was there too, which surprised me. He hovered awkwardly in the back, hands shoved in his coat pockets, eyes flicking from me to Leo without settling. My mother's lawyer, a man in his 50s with sharp glasses, nodded politely at Marlene before taking his seat. Then the bailiff announced, "All rise." The judge entered, Judge Rowan, a woman with silver hair pulled into a low twist and calm eyes that missed nothing. She sat, scanned the courtroom, then spoke. "We are here to address the petition filed by Ms. Diane Ellington regarding visitation rights for the minor child, Leo Ellington. Let's begin." My mother's attorney stood. "Your Honor, my client has been unfairly and abruptly cut off from her grandson. She believes this estrangement is harmful to the child and wishes to re-establish a meaningful connection." He spoke as if reading from a script, each sentence polished and sanitized. He gestured toward my mother. She dabbed theatrically at her eye with a tissue. "She made one mistake on Christmas," the attorney continued, "a minor oversight, and since then the respondent has withheld the child entirely, causing emotional distress to both parties." Judge Rowan turned her eyes toward my mother. "Ms. Ellington, do you wish to add anything?" My mother took a breath, voice trembling. "I love my grandson," she said. "I've always loved him. I just want to be part of his life. This has all been blown out of proportion." Carla leaned forward. "She's been suffering, Your Honor. It's cruel what Nora has done." The judge raised a hand. "Only those recognized may speak." Carla sank back, scowling. Then it was Marlene's turn. She rose slowly, pressing a button on the monitor behind her. "Before I begin, I'd like to play a video for the court." The Christmas video. 36 gifts, shrieks of excitement, paper flying, laughter, cameras flashing. And in the corner, Leo, sitting alone, small and silent, watching his cousins unwrap gift after gift, while nothing with his name ever appeared. The room was so quiet you could hear the soft hum of the monitor. When the clip ended, Marlene spoke evenly. "That was Christmas morning. 36 gifts for Ms. Winslow's children. 0 for Leo. Not a simple oversight, but one of many patterns." She placed the birthday card on the judge's desk next, the one where my mother wrote the wrong age. "Ms. Ellington could not recall her grandson's age," she said. "In the petition she claims a close relationship with him. The evidence shows otherwise." She laid out letters, printouts of texts, and a timeline of ignored school events, forgotten birthdays, and manipulative accusations. Judge Rowan read each piece, her face unreadable. Then she asked, "Does the child wish to speak?" Leo looked at me. His hand trembled in mine. I knelt to him. "You only have to say what feels true." He nodded once, then stood. He was so small in front of that towering bench. The sleeves of his shirt had slipped down again. He pushed them up nervously, then looked directly at the judge. "She forgot me," he said quietly. Judge Rowan leaned forward slightly. "Can you tell me what you mean?" Leo swallowed. "On Christmas, she forgot to give me a present. She gave lots to my cousins, but none to me. And she didn't say anything, she just didn't remember." My mother let out a shaky sob behind us. Leo continued, small but steady. "My mom shows up for me. My grandma doesn't. I don't want to see her." He sat back down beside me and immediately leaned into my arm. I wrapped it around him, feeling his heartbeat quick and fluttering. Judge Rowan lifted her gaze to my mother. "Miss Ellington, when is your grandson's birthday?" My mother froze, eyes darting. "March, the 15th, she guessed weakly. Judge Rowan shook her head. "Incorrect. And how old will he be turning?" 9, she said. "He is already 8, the judge corrected calmly. "He will be 9 next March." My mother swallowed hard, the color draining from her face. Judge Rowan exhaled. "I have heard enough." She shuffled papers, then looked directly at my mother. "This court finds insufficient evidence of a meaningful existing relationship between petitioner and the child. What's more, the documentation presented today demonstrates a pattern of inconsistent involvement, lack of knowledge of the child's basic information, and behavior more aligned with guilt and pressure than genuine connection." My mother's lawyer shifted uncomfortably. "Therefore," the judge continued, "the petition is denied. The case is dismissed with prejudice. This matter cannot be brought before this court again." My mother's mouth fell open. Carla muttered something furious under her breath. My father shook his head as if this were my fault, not theirs. But my son, my sweet boy. He let out a slow, relieved breath and whispered, "Is it over?" I squeezed his hand. "Yes, baby. She can't make you go." We walked out of the courthouse hand in hand. The sky had shifted from gray to a muted blue, like the world had exhaled with us. But peace rarely lasts long in families built on denial. 2 weeks later, Leo walked into the house with tears streaking his face. He dropped his backpack and stood trembling in the doorway. "I saw Ellie at Target," he whispered. "She ran to me and cried. She said I hurt Grandma. She said I made her sick. She said I ruined everything." My heart splintered cleanly. "What did you say?" I asked as I knelt in front of him. "I told her I didn't want to see Grandma anymore." His voice cracked, and she cried harder. He showed me a photo on his phone, Ellie sobbing in a shopping cart while Carla captioned it, "When children are taught to turn against their own family by bitter parents." Leo's lower lip quivered. "Did I do something bad?" I pulled him into my arms. "No, you didn't do anything wrong, you told the truth." "But why is she crying?" he whispered. "Because she doesn't understand," I said gently. "Boundaries hurt people who benefit from having none. But that doesn't make you wrong." He cried into my shoulder, small and wounded and brave all at once. Later that night, after he finally drifted to sleep, I sat in the living room surrounded by shadows and the dim glow of his star ceiling down the hall. Court was over, but the emotional cost was still unfolding. And I realized something sharp and painful. Boundaries don't create villains. They reveal them. Autumn settled over Silverpine in soft layers. Crisp mornings, quiet evenings, orange leaves piling along the sidewalks like nature's slow applause for surviving the chaos of summer. Life finally felt stable. Not perfect, not untouched, but steady in a way I hadn't felt in years. Leo walked into the kitchen one chilly morning wearing his puffer vest and holding a steaming mug of cocoa I hadn't made for him. He'd learned how to push the buttons on the single-serve machine by himself and looked immensely proud of his independence. Look, he said, raising the mug. I didn't spill this time. That's amazing, I said, brushing a crumb from his cheek. You're getting really good at that. He grinned, the faintest dimple appearing. Can I show you something? Of course. He led me to the living room and pointed up at the wall. Overnight, he had added a dozen new glow-in-the-dark stickers, small ringed planets and swirling galaxies, arranged like he'd stitched his own little universe just above the doorway. It's not done yet, he said, but it's getting good. It's beautiful, I told him. And it was. Not because it was perfect, but because the shape of healing was visible in every gently placed constellation. For weeks, life moved gently like this. Homework after school, warm dinners, late-night giggles when he insisted the stars on his ceiling were definitely brighter tonight. On weekends, he begged me to take him to the planetarium again, where he pressed his palms against the glass railing and whispered fun facts under his breath. He was coming back to himself, and I was too. Then, one crisp October morning, he walked into the kitchen with a strange question. His brow was furrowed, lips pressed together. "Mom," he asked, "are we bad people?" The mug nearly slipped from my hand. I knelt beside him. "Why would you think that?" "Because," he said slowly, voice trembling, "Aunt Carla told Ellie, and Ellie told Noah, and he told me, that kids who don't want to see their family are ungrateful and mean." I closed my eyes for a breath I hoped he wouldn't see shake. "Sweetheart," I said softly, "doing the right thing doesn't mean no one gets hurt. Sometimes the right thing hurts people who don't understand it. That doesn't make you bad." He stared at me, thinking deeply. "But I don't want Grandma to be sad," he whispered. "I know," I said. "You have a good heart. But protecting your heart doesn't make you the villain in someone else's story, even if they want to make you one." He nodded, slow and uncertain, and leaned into me. I wrapped my arms around him and breathed him in, the smell of laundry detergent and cocoa and something uniquely him. As the months passed, something changed inside him. He stopped bringing up my mother at all. He didn't ask about her. He didn't wonder about her. He didn't fear her sadness or her accusations. It wasn't spite, it was acceptance. Children understand truths adults spend decades avoiding. November blew in with sharp winds and early sunsets. We spent evenings curled under blankets reading chapter books or watching documentaries about meteor showers. His laughter became freer, his shoulders lighter. By the time December arrived, we found ourselves decorating our Christmas tree in pajamas, homemade cocoa simmering on the stove, holiday music humming low. It was just the two of us. No chaos, no forced small talk, no pretending. Every ornament had a story. Every light felt like a choice. Every moment felt like a second chance. On Christmas morning, Leo opened his gifts slowly, savoring each one. A science kit, a new telescope, a Lego rocket, a set of warm gloves he actually liked, not mountains of gifts, not 36 boxes piled high, just things chosen with love. He held up the telescope and whispered, "This might be my favorite Christmas ever." "You say that every year," I teased. "That's because every year keeps getting better." Later that afternoon, after he'd spent an hour studying the pattern of frost on his window through the telescope, I walked out to check the mailbox. A single envelope sat inside. Cream paper, my mother's handwriting looping across the front. I held it for a moment, feeling its weight. Then I took it inside, sat on the couch, and opened it carefully. "Nora," it began, "I saw Leo at your aunt's last week. I didn't know he was there. I only saw him through the window. He looks so big now, so grown." My breath hitched. "I want you to know I won't fight you anymore. I know I won't get the chance to make things right. That's because of choices I made, not choices you made. I hurt you, I hurt him. I chose what was easier, not what was right. I thought love was the same for every child, but I was wrong." She signed the letter simply. Diane. Not Mom, just Diane. It felt more honest that way. I folded the letter and placed it gently in the drawer with the others, kept not out of sentiment, but out of a desire to understand the story that shaped us. Later that night, Leo padded into my room with a sheet of paper. "Can you read this?" he asked. It was an essay from school titled "What Family Means." Family isn't who you're born to, family is who shows up. My grandmother forgot me, my mom remembered me, my Aunt Lorraine chooses me, my Uncle Dave includes me. That's my family now. My throat tightened. I kept reading. Sometimes family changes, and that's okay. The people who matter stay. The people who don't. I used to be sad about it, but now I'm glad I learned the difference. When I looked up, he was studying my face, worried. "Are you mad?" "Why would I be mad?" I whispered. "Because I said Grandma forgot me." "She did forget you," I said softly. "You're telling the truth. Truth doesn't make me mad." His shoulders relaxed. "Okay." He hugged me then, tight, sincere, full of a love that felt bigger than our little living room could hold. Time moved forward, quiet and steady. Leo turned 9, then 10, then 11. He joined art camp, he joined robotics club. He asked fewer what-if questions and more what's next ones. His world grew brighter, wider, and he stepped into it with a confidence that made me proud every day. Then came the spring day when everything shifted again. We were at a Knicks game, our tradition, cheering loudly, eating overpriced pretzels, laughing at the ridiculous halftime show. We were happy, purely, simply happy. When my phone buzzed, I didn't check it at first. I let the crowd noise swallow the vibration. But when the game paused for a timeout, I glanced at the screen. A message from Aunt Lorraine. "I think you should know. Your mother passed away this morning." My breath stilled. Leo nudged me. "Mom, what's wrong?" I looked at him, his bright eyes, his jersey, his face flushed from excitement, and felt nothing, not anger, not grief, not relief, just a quiet, final understanding. "Nothing important," I whispered. "Watch the game." And he did, cheering his heart out as if life weren't shifting around him. We drove home after the game with the windows cracked open and the city lights reflecting off the windshield. Leo kicked his feet in excitement as he recapped every shot and every cheer. I listened. I smiled. I stayed present. Because the truth was simple. My mother had stopped being my mother long before she died, and the grief I'd carried all my life had already been laid to rest the day I walked out of her house. The next morning the call came. Carla. Her voice was sharp, brittle. "She's dead," she snapped. "Mom's dead, and you didn't visit, you didn't call, you didn't even try." I held the phone calmly. "We all made our choices." "She died thinking you hated her," Carla hissed. "I didn't hate her," I said quietly. "I just couldn't let her hurt my son." "You're unbelievable," she spat. "This is your fault. The stress—" "No," I said. "Her choices built this ending, not mine." She hung up without another word. I made breakfast. Leo sat at the table twirling a fork between his fingers. "Who was that?" he asked. "Your aunt," I said. "Grandma passed away yesterday." He set the fork down and thought for a moment. "Are you sad?" he asked. "No," I said honestly. "She stopped being my mom a long time ago." He nodded. "I'm not sad either. Is that bad?" "No, that's honest." He reached for his cocoa. "Are we going to the funeral?" "Do you want to?" He shook his head. "Not really." "Then no." He took a sip of cocoa, calm and unbothered. "Okay." That was it. No drama, no guilt, no heartbreak, just truth, just healing, just the two of us choosing peace. I didn't go to the funeral, I didn't send flowers. I didn't write a speech or sit in the back row pretending to mourn a relationship that hadn't existed in years. I spent that morning exactly where I needed to be. At home, sitting at the kitchen table with Leo while he colored a picture of a comet streaking across a navy sky. He didn't ask about the funeral. He didn't ask what other people would think. He didn't ask if we were doing the right thing. He just hummed under his breath, tapping his marker gently between strokes, lost in a world where love was simple and stable and didn't require a child to earn it. Around noon, a soft knock came at the door. I opened it to find Aunt Lorraine standing there, wrapped in a long gray coat, eyes red but kind. "Can I come in?" she asked. "Of course." She stepped inside, brushing snow from her sleeves. She glanced toward the living room where Leo sat cross-legged on the floor, leaning over his drawing with fierce concentration. "He's grown," she whispered. "Last time I saw him, he barely reached my hip." "He just keeps climbing," I said softly. She nodded, then pulled a folded paper from her coat pocket. "I thought you might want to see this." When I unfolded it, my breath paused. It was my mother's obituary. Not a long one, not flowery, not overly sentimental. Just the facts: her birth date, the town she grew up in, her 2 daughters, her job, the names of her grandchildren. But something was missing. Leo's name. Carla's children were listed: Aiden, Mason, Ellie, but Leo, not mentioned at all, erased, forgotten one last time. Lorraine watched the understanding wash over my face. "I told the pastor," she said hesitantly, "but your sister insisted the obituary should reflect the people truly involved in Mom's life." I let out a slow, steady breath. Not angry, just tired. "I'm sorry," Lorraine whispered. I folded the obituary quietly. "Don't be. It tells me everything I needed to know." She touched my arm. "You may not have had the mother you deserved, but you became the mother Leo needs, and that matters more than anything written in a newspaper." When she left, I walked back inside and found Leo holding up his drawing. "Look, Mom, it's us on a comet. We're holding hands so we don't float away." His timing was unintentional, but the metaphor hit me straight in the heart. "That's perfect," I said, kneeling to look closely. He studied my face with gentle curiosity. "Are you okay?" "Yes," I said honestly. "Better than okay." He leaned against me, still smelling faintly of markers and cocoa. And that was when I finally allowed myself to understand something I hadn't known how to name. I wasn't grieving a mother. I was grieving a version of family I had spent years trying to pretend existed. A version that was never real. From that day on, life didn't transform overnight. Healing rarely happens in clean lines, but each day felt a little clearer, a little lighter, a little more ours. By spring, Leo joined the art club at school. He painted entire galaxies with streaks of silver and gold. He came home with hands stained in color and stories spilling out of him faster than I could keep up. "That's a nebula," he'd say proudly, showing me a swirl of violet and blue. "Stars are born in those." "So are boys who survived things they shouldn't have had to," I whispered once when he couldn't hear me. He grew taller, his voice deepened slightly. He laughed louder. He asked fewer questions about the past and more about the future. One warm May afternoon, he ran into the kitchen holding a flyer. "Mom, there's a summer space camp. Can I go, please?" His eyes were stars themselves, bright, hopeful, ready. "Of course," I said without hesitation. "Let's sign you up tonight." He threw his arms around my waist, holding on tightly. "You're the best mom in the whole galaxy." I hugged him back, feeling his small heartbeat press into my ribs. "And you're the brightest star in mine." Life went on. And every day we created something new, a family built not from expectation, but from choice. Then, one summer night months later, after Leo had gone to bed, I opened the drawer where I kept my mother's letters. 4 envelopes, 4 ghosts, 1 obituary tucked behind them like a final chapter. I carried them to the living room fireplace, not out of anger, not to erase anything, but to set something down. One by one, I placed the letters into the fire. The paper curled and darkened, ink dissolving into sparks. The last things she ever wrote to me rising in thin gray trails. When the flames died, the room felt lighter. When I checked on Leo, he was asleep under the glow of the stars we had painted years earlier. He looked peaceful, whole, loved. I sat on the edge of his bed for a long moment, brushing his hair away from his forehead. "You will never have to earn love," I whispered. "Not from me. Not ever." He didn't stir, but his hand curled around the blanket as if reaching for something comforting in a dream. I turned off the light and stood in the doorway, watching him breathe in the soft glow of the constellations above him. That ceiling wasn't just decoration. It was a map of every promise I had made to him, the promise to show up, the promise to protect him, the promise to choose him, every day, every moment, every lifetime. As I walked back into the living room, I felt a sense of calm I hadn't known in years. Not peace born from denial or avoidance, but peace born from truth. And I realized something simple, something profound. Showing up every day, when it's hard, when it's painful, when no one else does. That's what love really looks like. And I had shown up for my son. Every moment, every milestone, every year. The rest was just noise. If you connected with this story, if it reminded you of something in your life, or if you simply want more stories of strength, healing, and quiet revenge finding its way back to the heart, take a moment to like this video, leave a comment about where you're listening from, and subscribe to stay with us for the next one. Your support helps these stories find others who need them, and until the next story, take care of your heart, and show up for the people who matter.